Hey guys, welcome to Force Multiplier. I'm your host Lorenzo Valdivia, and today we have with us Eric from Two Cops One Donut podcast. Eric, welcome, and go ahead and let's give a little bit of introduction. Tell about your podcast and a
All
little bit
right.
about yourself.
So I'm Eric Levine. I run a podcast called Two Cops, One Donut. And the whole idea is to use social media and its platform as a way to bridge the gap between the communication with frontline workers, such as police, and the community they serve. And we do that through long form discussion and get both sides of the conversation going. Those that do the job, and the conversation is basically educating on what they do. So if you're a SWAT officer, we'll talk about SWAT. And the idea is that if you never knew what SWAT did and all you knew is what you see in the news, now you'll get, a 2-3 hour, however long it takes, you'll get an in-depth education on what they do from the perspective of a person that does it. So all of that said, I hope it helps bridge that gap and help bring us closer to the community.
So we're just saying a SWAT is not like we see it on the TV shows.
Some of it is, some of it's not. Yeah, it's one of those things.
It's not as Hollywood as they make it out to look,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. It's definitely
Yes.
not as sexy as they think. It's
Yeah.
usually a lot
So
of sitting around, waiting,
yeah.
waiting. Oh, the guy came out. Thank you. All right, we're good now.
4 hours after you expected it.
You're right. Yeah.
So, well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I was kind of looking around and trying to find people that might want to talk cop stuff and especially as it relates to defensive tactics, and came across your guys' podcast, reached out, and we started chatting a little bit. And what is I don't know, let's talk training a little bit.
Okay.
From what you've seen, what you've experienced with training. We all kind of see how cops don't really get to train a lot. What are you
Yeah.
seeing out there? You seeing anything different where you were
So,
at?
my I've got a kind of a different view on training. One, I was an academy instructor for 3 years, for one of the 12th largest departments in the nation now, and I also was a trainer in Michigan, where I was a police officer for a little bit, and also a trainer for military police because I'm still in the Air Force. I was active duty from '06 to 2010, and then I switched over to the reserves. So, and I'm a cop for the Air Force. So it's always been police training. And I can tell you, small agencies don't stand a chance when it comes to the training that they need and that's available out there, because they just don't have the money and they don't have the resources. So I see a lot of small departments that they get the bare minimum,
Mm-hmm.
and even then there's no checks and balances. So there's a state required minimum, which is terrible. I have yet to see a state required minimum that meets what my standards would be.
Absolutely.
The department I work for currently, they mandate it. The state requires, let's say, 800 hours, and I think it's around 800. The department I work for doubles it. Actually, a little bit over that. They double it. So
Awesome.
the the training for our academy is almost a year long. It's right now it's about 8 months, and it's about to be bumped up about a month and a half more. So what I've seen in training is just, in my opinion, a lack of focus on the stuff that needs to be trained, and too much focus on stuff that needs to be put to the back burner until this other training gets accomplished.
Got you on that one. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about just that, right? Let's relate this into defensive tactics.
All right. My
It is
specialty.
it is one of the most we'll call them allegations that police officers get, right? Use of force allegations, excessive use of force.
Thank God for body
But
cams.
well, now we got them.
Yep.
Most departments, but it's something that is put on the back burner, right? Training. Hey guys, we got a budget cut. We're gonna cut the one thing that we get the most complaints about.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, exactly.
um, and you know, my personal opinion is it's not even necessarily that the officers are doing wrong. The officers are doing what they know, and that's not a lot,
Yeah,
right?
what they've been trained to do.
Yeah, and if they were trained a little bit more, maybe this stuff would come down. And but we focus on things like baton, right?
Right.
Uh, yeah, you've been in law enforcement for a
Yeah.
while, and
You spend a
I would ask
month
you,
learning how to swing a bat.
and when's the last time you pulled your baton out
Right.
to use it in a self-defense, not to break a window, not to move a snake,
Not to
right?
knock on a door, not to wake a drunk up in his car
Yeah,
that's passed out at the drive-through parking lot.
but
Yeah,
we give
I've
it so much
never, in
priority,
17 years of law enforcement, I've never used my baton on a person.
right?
Never done it.
I've used it for dogs.
And yeah, I know people that have used it, and it's a go-to tool for them. But that's few and far between. And my opinion is that when you start using it as a use of force on a person, it tends to cause you more headache than it's worth, which we can get into. Poorly trained officers are hesitant. Hesitant officers are unsafe. And that's
I
where
like
we
that.
start getting into trouble. So if
Yeah.
you have a well-trained officer who's supremely confident, and I don't want to call it arrogance, I'm calling it they believe in the training they got. It's not they didn't know what they didn't know situation, but if you are well-trained, I've done jiu-jitsu since 06. I don't get worked up, and that's because of that training. I don't get worked up when I get in a use of force. And I still work in the field. I'm a detective now, but I'm a field detective. I run a team. We do property crime stuff. So we do buy bust. We do all these different things. So I'm still out in the field. I'm still getting into use of force. But I can tell you, because of my training, it's a game to me. And I'm not saying that in a arrogant way. I'm not saying it in a I don't take the job serious. I'm saying my mind doesn't switch into fight or flight. My mind looks at it as like, all right, dude, like, stop. It's like, it's like a little kid trying to fight you. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I've been here before.
Yeah, because I know where my training's at, and I know 99% of the people I deal with aren't equipped to handle the level of training I have. And that's great. That's where I want officers to be at. So, I don't know where I was going with that. You got me going down a rabbit hole. But
no, man. I think it's good because you said it's not that police officers are using what they know, and the stuff that they get is very minimal, right? I mean, I was at a department for I was with them for about 2.5 years, and in that 2.5 year time frame, there was a lot of stuff that went down. Police officers or deputies that got injured, corrections that got injured, and we had a 2-hour training in that 2.5 year period.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I didn't realize how unprepared I was at my old police job when I first separated from the military. And once I went to the department, major city that I work for now, and see how far ahead of the game they are when it comes to training, it really started to open my eyes up. Now, the saving grace was I was doing jiu-jitsu prior to that. So that helped me. I don't know where I would have been without that. So it goes to show, like, you wonder why you hear about some of these officers that get in trouble. It's one, they're that 0 to 5 year officer typically when it comes to use of force. And then two, I want you to look at the size of the agency and the type of funding they have. Because as soon as the officer gets in trouble, the first thing they dig into is your training. So they want to see what training you've had. And on paper, to people that don't know, a 40-hour class for the year looks wonderful. You did your 40-hour annual training, and one small chunk of that has control tactics or defensive tactics in there. And you know how that goes. Nobody wants to get injured. They're all, officers that have been on the job for a little bit, and I'm not getting hurt. Okay, so then they go through the motions. Okay, well, if that's how you train, that's how you're going to respond out in the field, and you ain't going to be ready for it. So if you're only doing that once a year, it makes sense why some of these officers are ill prepared for what they have to deal with when it comes to use of force. And what do you have left? If you don't know what you're doing, you're unconfident, you're unsafe, you're going to escalate to a use of force that probably wouldn't have been necessary had you had the proper training. But because you don't, and you didn't know that, you automatically jump to a higher level because you can't handle what you're doing there. What do we have left? Intermediate and deadly force.
Or that thing you saw on YouTube or Facebook videos you're scrolling.
What's that?
I said, are you going to resort to that thing that you saw on YouTube or Facebook?
Yeah, exactly. I don't mind a little Google training. If you can get some good YouTube training and you're not getting anything else, hey, it's a start. It's better than nothing. But
yeah.
But I want you to have a good base to understand, and I've got all sorts of theories on how to make that better.
Yeah, let's talk about them.
Well, my first and foremost thing, if we want to talk about use of force, I think it should be mandatory that you have to get a blue belt in jiu-jitsu or grappling. I think jiu-jitsu is the best because it teaches control and manipulation of all the limbs, where other types of grappling focuses just on being on top, such as like Greco-Roman wrestling in general. Don't get me wrong, top game is great, but anytime a seasoned wrestler jumps into jiu-jitsu, they're a fish out of water for a little bit. Now, they adapt quicker than anybody, so that's what's cool about wrestlers. But in jiu-jitsu, it teaches you how to utilize all the positions. And let's face it, as cool as it would be to be Jackie Chan and always have some sweet moves ready, we're cops. We get complacent. We have bad days. We have poor nutrition, working midnights. We're not always on our A game. So you need to be prepared for when you're not on your A game, and that's where jiu-jitsu comes in. It makes you great from the worst possible positions. So being on your back, having somebody on your back, all these things, learning how to control, how to breathe, how not to panic, all of these factors that if you know anything about defensive tactics, control tactics, that's the bread and butter. So jiu-jitsu being mandatory for 2 years, because that's about the general practice. We're talking 2 to 3 times a week for an hour or more at a time to get your blue belt from any legitimate BJJ place. So I think there needs to be somewhat of a vetting process, and there's always some officer or somebody trusted within the department that's going to be able to guide you to reputable places. Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to have an idea, but it's another to have a solution for it. One is a lot of departments give an incentive for, let's say, uniforms, or an incentive for a PT test every year. Like you gotta, my department pays $1,000 if you pass your PT test every year.
Where do you work at? I need to go there.
I'll tell you offline. But so there's an incentive to stay healthy, stay fit. Now, is that the greatest incentive, and is the PT test super hard? No, not yet, but it's a step in the right direction. So here's the next step. Rather than offer a uniform incentive for rookie to 2-year officers, I want your first 2 years, that incentive money goes towards your membership to the jiu-jitsu place. Mm-hmm. There will be a co-op with your gym. The gym keeps attendance. That's the only requirement they have. They keep attendance, and they make sure you're showing up. So when your PT rep or whoever it is that makes sure you're doing all your training, they get that place checks in with you. Yep, he made it all these times this month. So you'll have so many classes that you're supposed to hit in that 2-year mark. Let's just say it's 100 to make it easy. You have to hit 100 classes. So by the end of the 2 years, if you hit all 100 classes, cool. You're no longer required to go. You move on to your next level of whatever it is you do. However, if you don't make it, you have an additional 6 months to get to get certified. And then people are going to say, well, what if you get hurt? What if you get this? Anything that happens, if you go on O days, you get hurt, you go on vacation. If you're military, I'm military, so I'm taking my military leave time. Right. Those days get accounted for, and you just gets added on to the end of your limit. So there's the easy fix. Typically, most jiu-jitsu places I've ever experienced, and I've been all over the nation with these, they're a big proponent of helping law enforcement, because just like us, they cringe when they see an officer in a position that's so easily reversible for them, but they don't know what they're doing. They're a fish out of water. And a lot of times you call these jiu-jitsu instructors sharks. And there's a reason for that, because when you're going against them, you feel like a shark just keeps keeping you under, picking you apart, picking you apart. So
I know the feeling.
So that is what you do next is you get these jiu-jitsu gyms involved, because we got to have the community support. So you get the community support from your local gyms. The gyms give back by giving, some sort of discounted rate. Everybody wins, because now we have safer officers. They know, the jiu-jitsu practitioners and the gym owners know that those officers are going to be more likely to take in a suspect safely rather than doing harm. Because let's face it, if we're not trained and we have to escalate our use of force, the bad guy tends to get hurt. I don't want to deal with the bad guy getting hurt. I don't want them to get hurt. Because as an officer, you know damn well, if the best formula is a peaceful result, because it's less paperwork for everybody. There's a lot less money that goes in from taxpayers' money having to do some sort of investigation on you because you got any use of force. So that is my biggest fix for a lot of things. I want a mandatory blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I know there's people out there that may disagree, but they don't know what I know. They don't have the perspective I have. So it is what it is.
Yeah, no, and that's fine. I have a little I'm not going to say I disagree with you by any means, but I think my view is a little bit different in it, in a sense.
Okay.
Kind of go with you, kind of go against the grain a little bit. So I love jiu-jitsu. I mean, it's what I love.
My wife asking me a question.
Yeah. What? No worries.
My dog's throwing up. So.
Uh-oh.
Sorry.
And my view on blue belts, right, making police officers or into blue belts, I have a couple different things on that. Is one, I'm afraid of the degrading of the belt by this mass. We got to get it out there to people, right?
Yes, that's
my first
why
one.
You have to pick a reputable place,
right?
Because you got those McDojos out there.
Yeah, my second one is what I'm afraid of departments are going to do is they're going to find reputable places where jiu-jitsu doesn't work for law enforcement. And what I mean by that is we can't make police officers into these jiu-jitsu practitioners. And that's what I'm afraid people are going to try and do, right? We want to make these guys into jiu-jitsu and not find where we can make jiu-jitsu work for law enforcement, right? We don't need police officers out there leg locking people and doing all these toe holds and stuff.
Sometimes it helps.
and we got to make sure that it puts it. What's the word I'm looking for? It
fits.
It pays attention to the police officer with a duty belt.
Yeah,
and stuff like that, right?
So you got things like GST, Gracie Survival Tactics.
Yep.
He developed that whole program. I'm an instructor for that. He developed that whole program around police officers. As a matter of fact, Henner and them, they've gone through police academies, the full Monty, and that's why I'm really into it. So,
I just went through GST. Gosh, 3 weeks ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
I went up into Denver and went with Evandro Nunez, and he's actually going to be a guest here on the podcast in the future too. So
very cool.
I told him about it, and man, he was all fired up and excited. So.
That's cool, man. When you get Henner could sell you. Could sell ice to an Eskimo. He's that type of dude. Like, I talked to him, I'm like, I'll buy whatever you're selling, man. He's just good at it.
I'll buy that ocean water from Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's a good dude. But you're absolutely right. Part of that fix is taking whoever the instructors are, because like I said, most of the time you've got police involved anyway. They're already going to a gym or going to that place, especially in small towns, because you've only got one spot to go typically.
That's all I got here.
Yeah. And so, like my city, I've got like 12 that I can pick from. And I can tell you which ones, just because I've been around the game for so long, which ones I trust and which ones I'm like, no, it's not for me.
Right.
But you get them involved. You get those instructors involved, and you tell them, like, hey, look, here is what our concerns are. This is what we're looking out for, and work with them. You got to be able to work with them, and it's a logistical issue that has to be overcome, because at the end of the day, they're going to want some sort of liability.
Absolutely.
Like, what were you being taught? What were you being taught there? And the argument I always counter with is, how many times have you tackled a bad guy? And every cop is like, tackle, one or two, or some are like, yeah, I tackle them all, whatever. And I'm like, all right, were you trained how to tackle in the academy? I guarantee almost nobody's taught how to tackle. You may be given armbar takedowns or bar hammer takedowns or chin tilt takedown, whatever it is. There's certain type of takedowns you're taught, but you are not taught how to, wrap up and take them down, like in football. Now, there's 2-leg takedowns, single-leg takedowns. These are wrestling moves. But more often than not, in a police academy, you're not taught to tackle. So,
and that's what we see a lot of police officers do.
So, yeah, and good for them. If that is your instinct and you're good at it, great, as long as it works. We're going to get hurt in a fight no matter what. We always do. So the way that I look at it now is, I don't care what the move is. Was it reasonable? Yes. Was what you did reasonable? The tackle, I tackled him. Well, were you taught that in your academy? We're in your training manual. Does it say you can tackle? Well, it doesn't. But what my training manual does say is any moves that are reasonable for that officer in that moment. So that's the catch-all. So if you want to help other police departments nationwide, I would get that language somewhere in your use of force policy that you're allowed to use any moves that are reasonable at the time. So that's a protection.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy because the Supreme Court gave that to us, right? Yeah. What a reasonable police officer would do. Yeah. It's already there. But yeah, I agree with you. They try to make these big
policy. Is one thing to do what's legal. It's another to do what policy dictates.
Right. No. Well, but we can take that same that legal piece and put that into our policy because it's already been set for us.
Yep.
Instead of making up these force continuums and all this stuff that these terms that aren't legal.
Yeah. So let me twist your brain a little more. Think about this: chokes, lateral vascular neck restraint, or carotid choke, or what's another name? Rear naked choke, sleeper hold. All of these moves, right?
Vascular neck restraint.
Yeah, most places that's a no-no. One, because it looks bad, right?
Absolutely.
But my argument is you should train every officer on how to do it, and here's why. Most people would argue that in a deadly force situation, anything goes for an officer. If he is about to die, about to get stabbed, whatever it is, shot, if all he has is a chokehold, they're going to let it go. They're going to say, okay, that's fine. Deadly force situation. This is where training comes in. And this is where the legal problem I see down the road. Deadly force situation, I put a choke in. Guy passes out. I continue to choke to the point he dies. Am I liable? I know he's out because of my training. I know he's passed out, and I could handcuff him with no issue, and he's going to wake back up because I did a blood choke, not an air choke. So now you're going to get these officers out there that aren't trained. One of them's going to get in a deadly force situation. They had the opportunity to learn this stuff, and they didn't, and they choked, and they choked, and they choked until that person died. And then the defense is going to get some sort of, or a prosecutor, we don't know these days, a prosecutor is going to get up there and say, I've got these experts that tell me if you had let go at a reasonable time when he was passed out, you should have known that he was passed out, and the force is no longer necessary.
Yeah.
Because that's how we work. We combat the force, and once that threat is gone, we're supposed to de-escalate and drop our level of force.
Absolutely.
So this is where my argument comes in, that even though you may not approve chokes to be used unless it's a deadly force situation, I still think you should be trained in it because we could save a life. We could save, and I get the argument that some will want to make, but I don't want to kill anybody.
No.
So even if you're trying to shoot me or you're trying to stab me or whatever it is, and I get lucky enough to get in a position where I can choke you out, I'm not going to keep holding the choke until you die. In my head, I just became a murderer because I knew you were out. I knew the threat was gone. And I would hate for another officer to get in that position. They held the choke forever and they thought they were okay. And then they're going to learn, like, oh, if I'd have done that much training, I would have known that that guy was no longer a threat after a few seconds, because literally a good blood choke can put you out in about 3 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
And you roll them over, you put them in cuffs, and they wake up.
About the time they're waking up, they're go.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you on that. I've had that exact same argument that you just brought up. I've had that with people, and you know, it comes to the looks thing, right? It doesn't look good, so
Yeah.
it can't be good. In the eyes
Perception.
of, we'll call politicians.
Yeah.
We'll call it what it is. But yeah, Missouri here, we just passed a bill here where police officers cannot use a chokehold for controlling unless a deadly force situation is warranted, is how they did it, right? They didn't completely ban it outright like we've seen in some states.
Okay.
But they said, you know what? If it comes to a deadly force, you got to have every option available, and we're not going to restrict you. So deadly force, yes, go ahead and use it.
Yeah.
But don't use it just to get somebody in handcuffs or just to control them.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'll take that. Right. I'll take that over. Hey, you guys can't touch their necks. When we were training in Colorado, GST, they go over some of that stuff,
Mhm.
and they don't teach you how to choke somebody out. They teach you how to defend against the choke, right?
Yeah.
Right. We play the other way.
round.
Yeah. And there were some techniques that we were learning there that the officers there, they said, we can't use that. And I'm like, well, why not? Well, it puts pressure on their neck. Like, wow. You're just touching it. They're like, nope, touches the neck. Politicians here said we can't do anything that puts pressure on the neck.
Huh. Yeah.
And
I'm not a decision maker, because if I was, it would be allowed. But the thing I like about GST is they're willing to go to court as expert witnesses.
Yep.
If you do use a choke or any of their moves, and to explain the science behind it and stuff like that. And I could make the argument all day of why choke should be allowed, and it should be, just at the same level as a taser, because it's safer at the end of the day to be certified in using a taser than, let's say, using your baton upside somebody's head, because that's deadly force.
Mm-hmm.
The odds of a taser killing somebody is a lot less. The one thing you do have to be careful of is tasing somebody over cement or blacktop or something real hard, because they can't catch themselves if they're fully incapacitated.
Right.
So that's a danger. But I can show you case after case after case. There are thousands of jiu-jitsu gyms, grappling gyms, MMA, whatever. There's matches. No one has ever died from being choked out, passed out. No one's dying, because if they were, these gyms, they're little LLCs. They wouldn't even be. They would not take that type of liability.
The liability of it, yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't be out there. So my argument is, make it an intermediate use of force. Make these officers have to get certified in it every 6 months. Make these officers have to have it done to them so they know what it's like. They know how long the recovery time is on average for people, because everybody's a little different.
Right.
And they know what a body going out feels like, so they
And
can.
I think that's a big key piece right there, right?
Yeah.
It's, you have to know what that feels like being
Right.
on the giving end, not the receiving end, the giving end of that.
Yep.
To understand, okay, now it's my time to make my move to
transition.
a controlling. Well,
Yeah.
let's go to a controlling position from there.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. And that's exactly what it should be used for, is getting to a controlling position, or, just holding what you got. Put the choke in, he goes out, or he complies, whatever. then just sit seatbelt in, hold what you got, wait for your partner to get there if you don't have one. Um, without the choke actually being there. You're in position, but you're not applying any pressure. So,
Yeah, something similar. When I train my guys, and we teach them into controlling techniques, right, or controlling positions, I will say. We tell them, hey, bad guy, when he's ready to go to jail, you release that, but you don't let it go. You keep it there so that he knows I still have control. I'm still here, and I can go right back into where I need to until you're ready to go to jail.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes just I try not to be mysterious with these guys. I want them to know exactly what my plan is some most of the time, I should say, most of the time. Because I've had a guy down before. I had knee on belly. That was a pressure he'd never felt before. And if those listening don't know what knee on belly is, it's basically I'm driving my knee into your diaphragm. I got my weight over that knee, and I've got my other leg, usually it should be my weapon side, away with my foot out for a base. And if you learn how to use that, you can put a lot of pressure down on the diaphragm, make it very uncomfortable. It's not dangerous, but it's very uncomfortable. And all the bad guy's going to be able to focus on is trying to move your knee. So I know where those hands are. He ain't reaching for a weapon. His hands are right there. And I will work that pressure to my advantage and let him know, hey, you're going to roll over. I'm going to cuff you. That's what's going to happen from here. You're not going to stand up. You're not going to do any of that. If you do, I'm going to jump on top of you, and I'm going to soften you up a little bit. I'm in the position. He knows I'm going to get there. There's nothing he can do about it.
Yep.
Because when they're down and they feel that pressure, and I'll let them know. I'm like, I'm going to start relieving some pressure. The moment you don't do what I tell you, I'm jumping on you. And once they have it in their mind that, like, he knows what the hell he's talking about, I can feel the control. Like you said, let him know you still got control. But we don't use our words enough. And with body cameras, using our words, we got to learn how to be our own, Morgan Freemans for our body cameras, because it just helps us. I think we should have to? No. But do I think it saves me a lot of headaches in the long run? Fuck yeah. So I will always, you'll hear me. I'm giving a play-by-play while I got a guy. I got his arm. All right, dude. Right now I got you in an arm bar. I'm going to roll this arm over my leg because I plan on putting a cuff on you. But I ain't getting my cuffs out until I got them in position.
Yeah.
So that's another big one for officers. Please stop getting your damn cuffs out before you're in a position to cuff.
You're preaching, man.
If you,
I just did some training with my, I teach at a police academy, and we just did our controlling from the top position, and the position we actually use is knee on belly.
Yeah.
That's what I teach them. I tell, hey guys, we're not going them out. We're not going to side control. There's a lot of bad stuff that can happen there.
Yep. I want a level of separation. I want to keep my eyes up, see what's around me.
Yeah. Let's use knee on belly to control. We teach out of a program called Strategic Self-Defense and Gunfighting Tactics. Johnny Lee Smith, he was our first guest on the podcast. And this is one of the things we get from him. And it's just like you said, is, I have control of this guy. And I tell my guys, hey guys, what do you want to do as soon as bad guy's on the ground? And they're like, cuff him. I'm like, nope, wrong answer.
Do you have control?
Yeah. I tell them that. Do you have control of him? And they're like, yeah. Why are we in a rush, guys? Let bad guy make the decision. You know what? All right, guy, I'm ready to go to jail now.
Yeah.
Right. Let's hang out till backup comes. Right. Police officers were taught for so long. Right. You got to get handcuffs on bad guy quick. That's how you get control of them. I'm willing to argue that against anybody.
Yep.
I can show you. I can keep a lot of control on you with my handcuffs being in that pouch for a while.
Yep. And most of us are right-handed. So when we get our cuffs out, now our weapons hand is dominated with something else. It's occupied. So
what you're saying is train with your offhand.
Yes. I try to tell
everybody.
Isn't
that a concept?
I try to tell people, like, if you start learning how to cuff with your non-dominant hand, then you're going to make life a lot easier for yourself in the field. But yeah, get control. Make sure you've got all the control you need to handcuff without an issue, because they're either compliant or they're not.
Mm-hmm.
If you're compliant, then them cuffs are going to go on with no issues. If you become non-compliant, I'm not cuffing you standing. You're going to the ground. Either you're going to go there because I made you, or you're going to go there because you realize struggling with me is not going to be worth it, because either me and my partner are going to take you down. And one of my arguments, if you got in a fight with somebody or any sort of struggle, do not cuff alone. You should never cuff alone. I don't ever want to cuff alone if I can help it. But I understand there's some agencies, they just don't have the manpower. So sometimes you just gotta handle it. You gotta earn your paycheck. And but I'd never cuff alone if you don't have to, especially if there was any sort of resistance. And it could be something as easy as turning away, pulling away. That in my head is a sign. It probably won't go bad, but now there's a chance, because normal people don't do this. This is not normal behavior.
Yeah.
So a safety issue for officers out there listening. If they do any telltale sign like that, they are no longer an option to cuff alone. Don't try. Just control them. If you have to sit there for 20 minutes while you wait for backup to get there, sit there for 20 minutes. Have a conversation with them while you're sitting in a position of control. Because I guarantee the moment that metal hits their arm, it's going to be back on.
Yeah, no, man, so, I couldn't agree with you more. I am a big fan of, I don't need to sit here and fight with this guy. Here's my view. Here's what I tell my guys. If you find yourself on the ground in a bad spot, you have no business trying to control this guy anymore. Get to your tool belt, create distance, and control them utilizing the tools that you have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you have control of him, hey, keep control of him. Like you said, what's 20 minutes to get cuffs on and wait for somebody, to both you guys get home safe, right? Bad guy goes to jail and you get to go home with, very minimal injury to yourself.
Yep.
Now somewhere I'm at, when I was with the sheriff's department, it could take 30 minutes for backup to get there to me.
And again, that's where the communication part goes to letting bad guy know, hey, I have no options other than to go to something a lot stronger than just my hands and feet.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to sit here and we're going to wait. Because if not, you're not going to like the other options. It makes them think.
Make sure your body camera is going for spontaneous statements too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I love body cameras. I am such a huge fan of body cameras.
I am too. So let's jump into. No, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
Don't want to go down the body cam train.
Yeah.
But what I do want to go back to is something we started talking about earlier, where you said about police officers not training because I can get hurt in training and it's going to affect my job, and then I'm going to be put off of work. And
yeah, that's a big one.
And let's think about that, guys. Right? If I don't train, I'm not going to train because I can get hurt, but I'm going to go out there and fight with these people, and not because I want to fight with them, because they're forcing me to, without the training. So my liability and my chances of getting hurt are higher than if I were to train in a controlled environment by a instructor who knows what he's doing, that minimizes risk and injury to train me.
Yep.
How about that?
And of all the arts, jiu-jitsu is probably the most gentle way you can train and keep training. Because I promise, I boxed. You go out and box, you can get hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, and that could be against nobody. I'll have my hands wrapped and I'll punch a bag. I'll do 10 rounds, 2-3 minute rounds with a minute in between, because I'm not an animal. I don't have that level of cardio. And I say 10 rounds. I usually make it about 6 really good rounds. And then after that, I'm just going through the motions. But
let's move to shadow boxing.
Yeah. But my hand's going to get hurt. It happens. Yeah. You get tired, you get fatigued, you punch wrong. And next thing you know, you got a boxer's fracture, something like that. You go do Muay Thai. I'm a huge fan of Muay Thai because it involves the elbows. And everything we do as police officers is short-ranged. So
Mm-hmm.
elbows are huge and very underutilized. Very good distraction strike. So I like Muay Thai. I love kickboxing, American kickboxing. I love what's another good one? Dang it, I can't. I'm blanking on what I just had in my mind. Not Taekwondo. Dang it, Iceman Chuck Liddell. He did that art. I can't. Kempo. That's what I was thinking of.
Okay.
Kempo's great. That Russian Sambo. Sambo's
Sambo.
amazing. Sambo's another good one.
I just started looking into that a little bit.
So all of these arts are great. However, nothing is going your chances of returning to do it the very next day are a lot lower because it's more taxing on the body, especially if you get caught. Because we're talking strikes. Jiu-jitsu's no strikes. Jiu-jitsu's no strikes. It's all just manipulation and flow. Kind of like Tai Chi, but Tai Chi don't work. So,
oh, come on.
It's beautiful. It's great exercise, but it is not going to help you in police work. I'll put it that way.
Now, I will argue, and I don't even know that it's an argue, but police officers do need to train in striking to a level, right?
Sure.
Again, that strategic self-defense and gunfighting tactics, part of the curriculum in there is a block on strikes. And
absolutely,
I was teaching at the police academy that I work at, and somebody walked in and they're like, "Why are cops in a fighting stance and punching? It doesn't look good." And I said, "Well, let's talk about it. Right? Let's talk about why it is good.
I have to fight."
I said, have you ever tried to control a bad guy, and maybe you needed to move a little bit more, maybe you needed to get out? Let's say bad guy's on top of you, right? Bad guy's in that mounted position on top of you, and you find yourself on the bottom, and you're mushing him and you're shoving him, and you can't get out. Well, what if I showed you how to throw an elbow? What if I showed you how to throw a hammer fist? And that gave you just enough distraction to get out and get away from bad guy or get on top.
That's why we call them distraction strikes.
That is why we need to learn to strike.
Yep. I tell the way I preach it is use your fists, use your elbows, use your feet while you're standing. The moment it goes to the ground, open hand. I like open hand even standing personally. Because just the dynamics of a real world fight, I don't want to make my hands in op. And anytime you punch a skull, you take a big risk of making your hands go in op. So I like open hand techniques, especially on a grounded subject, because the most common injury to an officer in a grounded subject, it isn't because of, the fight itself. It's because they swung and missed and hit the ground. They skipped off the forehead, or they hit the forehead, which, please stop punching people in the forehead, guys. It's the worst spot. And officers have broken hands at the end of the fight.
Oh my God. So let's end this piece on this one, and then let's record a part 2 if you're good with that.
Hey, I'm down. Keep going.
I got the families coming, and we gotta
Okay.
run out to go run some errands. But
No
let's end it with this, with punching, because you brought up something, and I totally agree with you. And police officers should not punch suspects in the human head with a fist.
Yeah.
Because you break your hand, you lose control of your gun.
Yep.
I'm okay with the palm heel. I'm okay with the elbow.
Yep. I love it.
Never, guys, never, ever, ever punch the human head.
I get it. Instinct takes over.
But, and it goes back to training.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it goes back to. You have to, and this is where it goes back into jiu-jitsu, is you have to train for what your job is first, and be good at that, and make that your main thing, and then make the sports stuff secondary.
Yeah.
Then that stuff will fit in.
Yep.
Personal opinion.
No, I agree. And the more you do the job, the easier it is to mold your jiu-jitsu game towards what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had that mindset. I try not to sit on my butt and start scooting towards anybody. You know what I mean? I'm always going to play the top game if I can play the top game. So
right.
Yeah.
So hey, man, I think we got a lot of other good stuff to talk to.
Oh, I can go for days, bro.
Oh man. Hey guys, listen out for part 2. We're gonna get back together. We're gonna talk some more.
Okay.
And I think we got some good conversations going
Yeah.
here.
Tell all you
Some
peeps, man. Two
good
cops, one
stuff.
donut. Check us out. We're on everything. YouTube,
Check them out. They're
Spotify, all that good stuff.
Yep. You guys just released was Sergeant Anderson, was that his name?
Yep. Sergeant Bruce Anderson is a good episode.
Listen to that, guys. I started listening to it. Great podcast. Good, man. Good learning, good training points.
It's a good first episode. If you're going to watch any of our episodes, that's the number one.
And I'm only 45 minutes in of it. So.
2.5 hours. Yeah. They're a little
Hey
long.
guys, Eric, I always end with this. And I always want to remind everybody out there to get out there and train, make yourself better, be better for yourself, be better for your family, be better for your friends, and especially get out there and be better for those that you encounter daily in your job.
Amen.